Hey guys, welcome back to the Malabash Spotlight Show. Today I have with us a really cool guest. He is a former on-air personality and now has his own podcast. He's a career life coach. Thank you so much, Nate, for being with us today. It's really great to have you. Thanks for taking the time.
Well, Ashley, I appreciate the invite to be a part of this.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have it any other way. I got to be on his podcast and it was a really fun experience and got to learn a little bit more about Nate. And so it's really cool to have you here. And I'm looking forward to learning about how you went from on-air personality to your career coaching that you do now. You've got this really cool podcast, which is called That's a Job, or Is That a Job podcast. So you guys will definitely want to check that out. I'll have it running at the bottom of the screen here so you can look it up. And yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it. What got you started in the media industry? You know, you started out as a radio show host, and now you're a podcaster and all that stuff. So what got you started in radio?
Well, I guess I say that's my first career, and I can think back to I started on a radio station in my hometown of Webster City, Iowa. Like I said, when I was 16. But going back, I can remember calling wiffle ball games at probably the age of 10 or something like that on my neighbor's deck or my friend's deck, and even sitting in front of the stereo, introing songs and listening to how things are done, and just always was interested in that. And would just kind of see where it went. So I was drawn to it and got into it and had some really good mentors that brought me along and understanding how to do DJ type work or read news, put news together, sports reporting, play-by-play sports, that type of thing. And as I moved through high school and thinking that's the path I want to do, and thinking what'd be cool is to own a radio station. And my boss at the time had a house in Florida, drove a Cadillac, had a house with a pool. I'm thinking that's where it's
Wow.
all at. But you know what? Now we all have a radio station right here in our hand, right? And
Exactly.
we're live right now, just like a radio or TV station would be. But as I went along and went through and got a degree in journalism, mass communications from Iowa State, and actually my last semester got hired by the family that I'd worked for since high school to work in a radio station as a sports director and a program director, thinking, wow, those are cool titles. I'm going to jump right into that. And I did. I remember having that meeting and asking, what do I get paid? And they told me, and I didn't know any different. Now I'm like, why in the heck did you even go for that? But, on the second thought, it's like, well, I love the work. I love the
Yeah.
work. I was passionate about it.
Yeah.
They came to me, offered me the job. I was good at it. I enjoyed it and put the time in. And as life went along, I started realizing um, I maybe wasn't making the money I should be making to support myself, even though
Yeah.
I love the work. The world did need that stuff now. Nowadays, I would question that. So, I bounced around a little bit between different broadcasting areas and worked in college athletics for a number of years, and got to be on the microphone for public address at football and basketball games. And then time moved forward and ended up back in the booth, just kind of a side gig, doing high school football games and basketball games, and some college stuff on ESPN Plus. Just got done doing high school state baseball finals here in the state of Iowa here a couple of weeks ago, and then with
Wow.
the podcast, it keeps me going in that. But I realized
Yeah.
it's a fun side gig or hobby, if you will. Can I sustain it as a career? No, I don't think I can do that, because that lifestyle comes with, or that career comes with a whole different lifestyle and where things can go. So, yeah, that's where I was at, but I bounced around too, Ashley, after I realized radio wasn't supporting me. I struggled to find a pathway. It took me a number of years.
Wow. Well, you know what? And I think everybody gets to that point where you have to redirect. So, you start out in a certain thing, it works perfect for that time frame, but it doesn't always last for forever. It's not that specific thing that we can take on for forever. Or if it is, maybe we lose interest in it. That just happens. That's just the way it goes.
Right.
Or the company goes under. There's so many variations that can happen. And nowadays it's really rare to see a person or a company that's ever stayed with something or someone for very long. So the good thing is that you knew that and you're able to switch and you're able to realize, hey, I have all these other cool assets and this is what I can do with it. So that kind of led you into your career coaching because you got to experience a bunch of different things and you got to realize that other people don't always know what they're getting into or what
Right.
is out there, even because there's so many job opportunities that nobody knows about. It's just so omnious. It's something, unless you're in that field, you won't know about it. Um, so that's one of the things that I think is really cool and is a great inspiration to people. What you've done is kind of explored all that, and you covered a lot of boundaries that they haven't realized yet. So tell us a little bit about your career advice. Like what do you do as far as that goes? What is your target person, and how does that work?
Well, I think I feel like I do target high school and college age students, but I've had parents come to me too, going, maybe I should talk to you, that type of thing, because they have bounced around a little bit. But
Yeah,
it got very frustrating. I think when I was in broadcasting, no one really told me what that world was.
yeah,
And then when I left there and had to find something, and it was in advertising sales, and then it was selling copy machines and fax machines and networking, and ended up back in radio. And then it was like I need to find something I'm excited about, and I was in college athletic administration for about 9 years, and got burnt out in that. So I just kept bouncing through these things, thinking, okay, this is going to solve it, this is going to solve it. But I was discovering things along the way that I didn't even know were out there. But I really got interested in helping people identify kind of their workforce pathways when I had some interns when I was working in college athletics, and we'd sit and have conversations. And that was something that when I was doing an internship in my master's program, I felt like, if I'm ever in this position, I want to sit with these young people. I want to talk to them about what their life plan is or their pathways, where they think they're going. And whether they take my advice or not, I guess that's up to them. Because I think back when I take my own advice, if I was sitting with myself, at 20 years of age, I don't know, or even 17. But, I had somebody come up to me and tell me I should get involved in economic development. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I had to Google it. But that's when I discovered, working with companies, that they were looking for people that really wanted to be engaged in their work. And I thought, that's very interesting. And there's a big workforce shortage that was began to happen about 10 years ago, and is really deep right now. When I got involved in a high local school district that reached out to me to help with my foundation of making connections with business people into education for a program called CAPS. And in those conversations, I started talking to these high school students about their pathways. And Ashley, you sit with a high school senior in April, and graduation's knocking on the door, and you say, "Hey, what are you doing? What do you plan on doing in the fall?" And they look at you, deer in headlights, and they're like, "Don't know," or give you some answer. And I'm like, "Oh no, this is not unusual, or this isn't just a Cedar Falls, Iowa problem, or a Northeast Iowa problem. This is everywhere, that we get people through high school and then we just leave it to them to try and figure out what some next steps are." So, kind of made it my journey, as I was working with that program, and even outside of that, to try and work with high school students and their families, and even I would say early underclassmen with universities and colleges, trying to figure out what is their next step, and why are they doing it. So kind of a pathway to purpose is how I term it, in looking at, why are you going to college? What are you looking to pursue? Because, Ashley, there's checklists everywhere. You can Google for how to get into college, how to put a college list together, how to write an essay, how to get your SAT, ACT scores done. All of that stuff's out there. But the small piece that I have found that I really enjoy working with people on is just like, okay, before we get into that, let's try and figure out that point you maybe want to get to when it comes to trying to figure out not necessarily a job or career, but what kind of work are you interested in? Where do you want to be? And then we start reverse engineering that backwards, and looking at, how do you get that training? How do you get that experience? Who can we connect you with? And then how do we set that timeline that you can work with? And I have found when you can put that together, through that checklist, through that plan, there is there's a relief of anxiety. There is an increase in confidence that now you can see maybe more so where you're going instead of just going step by step, hoping that you're on the right path.
Oh, that's a lot. I mean, that's great because a lot of people need that no matter what where they're in life. The high school thing. I remember being in high school, and you always get the question. You're just graduating. Of course, everyone wants to know where you want to go. What do you want to do? What's your goals and aspirations? And I think I knew maybe 1% of my friends actually knew what they wanted to do, and they had their life kind of all planned out. And, I knew that I wanted to go to college, but it was kind of like, what could I go for? What was it? What are the avenues? Business is one of the big things that everybody gets into. It's like, that's a safe one to get
Right.
into. And, it's really great to have somebody that can sit down with you, get kind of the bullet points of, hey, this is what you're interested in. This is some career opportunities that would be good for you. And this is a good way to follow that, and how to get there, which is probably the hardest thing, learning how to get to that spot.
Yeah, the key thing is that I found with young people, and I would even say, as I'm kind of painting this as many people, really, I don't think know who they are. And then there's some assessments I use, and even some conversation that we go through that they start to understand who they are, where they're going, that type of thing. And unfortunately, our younger generations have been victim of adults or other people telling them who they are, where they're going, how they're going to do it, what they're going to do. But when we can get them in the system that I have, you start opening their eyes to discovering how they like to work, the kind of environments they want to be in, people they want to be around, and then really focusing in on, okay, what kind of work fits that you can get into and be engaged in. And Ashley, I think it's 30% of our country's workforce is actually engaged in the work that they do, which is relatively scary for myself, or thinking of that there's another 70% that wake up in the morning going, I don't want to go to work. I need to figure out what I want to do with my life, or I need to find something different. And we've seen that through this great resignation that's happened after COVID.
Yeah, and COVID's really helped people to get creative in the different avenues that you would never think of. If you could only work from home, there's only so many things that you can do, right? So you have to get really creative. And I think it
Right,
helps open up people's mindsets to some other things that are out there, things they can do from home. The whole podcasting thing is really
right,
huge because it is like you said, it's like radio at home. You have such a great reach. You have such a great opportunity to get your message out there to so many people.
right.
So
Definitely,
yeah,
definitely. So yeah, it's exciting to work through. And I guess I want to rewind a comment you said of the people in your class, how many actually thought they knew what they wanted to do. I would say I was in that category. I was going to be on radio. I was going on the radio station, but I challenged those kids and I challenged those families to okay, well, tell me why. Tell me the pathway. Let's look ahead, and whether I talk them out of it or not, I guess that's up to them. But I want to just they should know what it can be. Can they? Is it a job they can afford? Is it a work they want to be around? And
yeah,
I had an interesting conversation with a young lady a few years back, and she just didn't know what she wanted to do, and I think she thought truck driving or business or something. And then we had sent her on in some exploration we have done. She ended
mhm.
up finding a tie to healthcare and actually went and shadowed open heart surgery. And
Wow.
before getting into that, when she was telling me about medical, I said, "Well, can you handle blood and cleaning people up?" And she said, "Yeah, I can handle that." And she came back and she fell in love with medical and all the jobs that were within there, and has went on to, I think, to get her a bachelor's of nursing. This has been a few years down the line, but that is a young lady that probably would have just ended up in a job somewhere, bouncing around, trying to figure some
Yeah,
things out. But you know, I saw her a couple of years later, and there was just a there was a different aura to her, that she was confident where she was going, and she also
yeah,
got the sense that there was people in her classes that maybe were just bouncing around, or people in her circles that were doing stuff that they thought they had to do but didn't really know why, and she had learned why that fit her, and that helped having some extra experience to prove it.
That's awesome. You're right. I mean, there's a huge possibility that she would have just been one of those job bouncers. Like so many of us, we just get to that point where it's just like, we can do it, but we're not happy about it. It pays
Right.
the bills,
Right.
but it stresses us out so much that we can hardly enjoy anything else in life. And that's amazing. Truck driving all the way to the medical field. That's
Yeah.
huge difference. Wow.
There was a young lady that, she was set, she wanted to go to law school. And as we're going through some of my assessments, and there's even one report that I pull up that says, what job should you not be in? And
Mm,
lawyer was one of them. And I was like, well, where does this come from? And a lot of times, actually, it comes out that somebody else had influenced your choice in doing that. And it came back that it was a parental led. And I don't blame parents. Parents wants what they want, what's best for their kid,
mm,
and either career ladder wise or money wise or whatever. But it was like it like we gave her permission to look at something else because that's all she'd been told of. I even had one young lady that broke down crying in a session, and I was like, "Did I say something wrong?" Because that I'm like, "Okay, what did I?" I'm thinking back, what did I say? But it came back to that clarity piece. She wanted to get into like forensic science, CSI type stuff, and she could see the pathway to get there based on her research, based on some people she was getting connected to. That it's almost like through this program and the work, we give them permission to explore instead of you got to do this now, you got to do this now, you got to do this now. Okay, let's take some time and actually do some work so it can actually save you some heartache and some frustrations later on in life.
And that's ultimately what we all need because it's nothing's worse than running around
No,
and realizing that you could have gotten there so much faster if somebody had just pointed you in that direction, giving you that option, opened up that door. Because a lot of times if you're a high schooler, you don't know everything that's out there, and even adults don't
right.
even know everything that's out there. So it's really I love the feedback is that you've gotten from some of your clients, that you've worked with, to see their success stories. That's really fantastic. I
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I've got a thank you note because I get invited to graduations now, right?
Oh,
So
that's
this is a thank
great.
you note from a young lady that actually I went to high school with her mom, who's now a pediatrician. Her dad's a veterinarian. I think she felt like she was drawn to have to follow a STEM field. And in talking to her and through the assessments, it was like she wants to work in STEM or technology fields, but she's wired to be a leader in it.
Mhm,
So that started putting in of okay, you need to look at maybe some of that training and learning as far as being a manager, being a leader, that type of thing. And she's going on to study at Duke. I told her I'm going to take most of the credit for her taking that pathway, which she rolled her eyes at. But I got to pat myself on the back a little bit. I'm hoping, but she sent me a very long thank you instead of just thank you for the gift. But what working and I how I helped her open her eyes to what else could be out there and possibilities. And that's what it really comes down to. I can't tell somebody what job they should have or what pathway they should have. I just want to help. I want to just help navigate them to that point that they're doing the work because I fully believe if you're putting in the work or if you're taking the ownership of it, you're going to put the work in and your success is going to pay off in the long run.
no, that's very true. If you put in the work smartly, you'll definitely see it pay off in the long run. Um,
Definitely.
I really appreciate you sharing that, and it's really great because it's you can tell that you're super passionate about what you do because when you talk about your like the kids' success stories or adult success stories, you light up, and that's really
Yeah.
you need to love your work. So that's really really cool. Now you work with people all over because you can do it virtually, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I've worked with hundreds of high school students in this Northeast Iowa area, but honestly, through shutdown and got to be very comfortable with Zoom and some of those processes and working together and put together online course. Yeah, I just had to adjust the way I was doing it, right?
Yeah.
And became pretty efficient at it of just jumping on a call and finding out what is the challenge and where do we need to go. And I keep refining my systems, but yeah, this is a challenge, and I even had a client from the UK that reached out. It was a little bit different. based on how their education system is in different roles. But the process is still the same of looking ahead to see what's out there and then reverse engineer how do you get there through training, through education, through networking, through project work, things like that, and then setting a schedule and a timeline to try and reach that. Um, are people going to bounce around? Yeah, that's fine. I've had arguments with people saying, "How do you expect a high school kid to know exactly what they want to do?"
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't." But if we're not having that conversation about what is after high school, what is after graduation, um, whether it's high school or college, there's a lot of people that have failed along the way, and you got to put some ownership on the student as well.
Yeah.
But influencers along the way that if it's a counselor or a teacher or a principal or a coach, parent, whoever, there's a lot of people that high school kids and college kids, and I think even young professionals and, even people my age, there's people that we listen to and are influenced by to help guide you, because those people that I just mentioned, they want what's best for you. And it's hard to sometimes accept a question or a critique, thinking you made a wrong decision. Well, maybe it was a wrong decision because I think sometimes people know a person more than I think sometimes they know themselves. And that goes back to my original comment about learning more about yourselves and how you can adapt. Because it's a Myers-Briggs type assessment that I use. And I've watched people, Ashley, read through that and open
Mm,
their eyes. And it's like, why is this the first time I'm seeing this? Because I feel this, but I've never really been told this, and now
yeah.
you're showing this to them, and sometimes they don't believe it, so you have them take it again, and sure enough, there it is. and
Yeah.
and as time goes on, I've had them come back to me and say, you know what, I thought through more of what we talked about and what I learned, and they can start seeing examples of of, of phrases or keywords or how they operate as their personality type with people and in circumstances, and that can be monumental and eye-opening to help a young person or any person move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be able to know how you work, how you think, that whole personality side to it goes a long ways into being successful in life because it's not just a copy paste for everybody. It's not just a cookie
Right.
cutter. Everybody's
Right.
different. We all pride ourselves on saying, "Oh, we're unique," and then we try to fit people into this cookie cutter situation, and that's just a recipe for disaster. I mean, I don't think it takes you to be a rocket scientist to think that. Um, so yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really interesting perspective on it as well. And getting back to your time in as a radio personality and everything, you got to see probably the cookie cutter mold the most, in the media field because it's very much like that. And how did that kind of help you with your career coaching that you're doing now?
You know, I think back to the number of people that I've worked with, whether they were in management or on the air or in sales or where they happen to be. Um, you know, I remember getting into it, and maybe I've been accused of thinking, well, you know, is there an ego thing with being in the media or broadcasting or even something like this? Yeah, there's it's nice when people say they've heard you or listened to a game, or I did high school state baseball a couple of weeks ago, and I was getting all sorts of messages of how much people were enjoying what I was doing, and it's nice to me. But I think what stood out different to me was I enjoyed the work. I was having fun with it, and being able to then be encouraged to keep getting better, that type of thing. My wife used to give me hassle all the time because I would go back and listen to recordings of games and on air and things like that, thinking you just love listening to yourself, don't you? And I'm like, honestly, no. I just am trying to see what do I need to improve on. It was almost my game tape that I had to go back and review and
Mm,
see how could I improve. And I still do that today. And I listen to other people that are professionals in that environment. But I had a gentleman that in that first full time job I had, he was coming in and recording ads for, I think it was a furniture store that he had worked at that radio station once upon a time. And he would come in and just say, "You run away, get out of this as quick as you can." I'm thinking, I'm not like you. Why would you say something like that? it took me some years later to realize what he was saying, and it came down to making enough money to support a family. And I think that's where he kind of maybe struggled in some of that. But that was a point that I didn't know. I didn't know what a pathway really was in broadcasting. And I had someone say, "Well, if you want to really make it, you got to go on to LA or New York or Chicago." And that really wasn't a pathway that at the time I was interested in being in. But as broadcasting and radio has gone on, and if anybody listens to a radio station nowadays, it's even hard for me to do it because it's so canned, it's so um, artificial to me. Um, it's through consolidation, and you can get money. You can listen to music and information anywhere. You don't have to listen to that local radio station, and to me, that disappoints me. As I always say, I'm an old radio guy, of how it comes together, but it's disappointing where that industry's gone. But to go back to, I guess, your question of looking at the people that I worked with, there were some really great people that busted their tails in what they were doing, but there was also some that were in it for the whole wrong reason of, I think, trying to find fame and fortune. But that's what we see on YouTube now too, and social media. So it's just a different medium than it was when I started.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world. I was talking to somebody else the other day about just how much the media has changed in the last couple of years alone. Much less they've been in the business for over 20 years, and so they've seen a lot. All the way from when we had VHSs and things like that. It was a whole different world then, right? Um,
Oh yeah,
so
oh yeah,
it's changed a lot.
slice and tape and cartridges and all that stuff. That reel-to-reel
Yeah.
machines and CD players and all that stuff.
I actually remember the little cassette tapes, and if it would break, because they'd had a little film, you could take some tape and tape it together, but you would
Oh yeah.
miss that little spot. But you had to do it so that. Yep, it was good times, good times. We have actually a question from one of our listeners who's asking, how do you help young adults on the spectrum or that have special needs to help them succeed like any other young person?
You know, it's unfortunate that that type of young person sometimes gets labeled too soon. Um, Many are authentic, and many there is some scale there. But I worked with a young man that I feel like never really had been given a chance to work on a project without close assistance. And he, to what spectrum he was on special needs. I would say he was on the more higher functioning end.
Mm.
um, but just giving that young man a chance to do some work and even struggle, but not necessarily there to be that net underneath him to save him, but then being able to just let him go and let people outside of, because he was actually working on a year end event for a class, for one of the CAPS classes I was working on. He had to reach out to the owner. He had to work on the menu. It was all these things, and was it a huge project? No, but it was monumental from him because he'd never been asked to do something like that.
Yeah.
And he went through that. He was an IEP that you told me that he had an individual education program. I would have said, no, that's not true. Because I guess we just treated him like he was a regular person, because there's many people out there with special needs that you don't know they have special needs. And sometimes just treating them normal, I think, is sometimes what they want to be allowed to do. So, granted, special needs, that's a very broad spectrum, and everybody has their own individual needs, and I don't want to blanket that that's the fix for everybody. But I feel like if you can just treat people like you treat everybody else, um, there's some good things that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of special needs, because I have special needs, and one of my little sisters, and they want to be treated as normal. They want to have a relationship. They want to do the work that they can do. And so that's
Right.
just meeting anybody on their level. And I know with you, you'll actually talk to them and figure out what it is that they're interested in. Know what they can do, and then like any other person, you target them in that direction. Will it be what somebody else can do? No, but none of us can do what somebody else can do. So it's
Right.
everybody's
Right.
unique in their
Exactly.
own ways. So I think, yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It's not a blanket for all. Uh, type all fixes or anything like that.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about your podcast now. Oh, let me see if I can pop it up here really quick. But
So
yeah.
yeah, so it's called That's a Job, and I started back in February. It actually got brought up in the fall. It's actually my daughter is a sophomore at the University of Iowa, so she's been kind of my guinea pig for some of this work that I've been through, and interesting in that process of searching out colleges and majors and opportunities and things like that. But her boyfriend came to me and said, because he knew my background in broadcasting and the career stuff, and he goes, "You should do a podcast about jobs people don't know what they are." And I went, "That's a great idea." I think it was based off my wife is a perfusionist. She runs the heart lung machine for open heart surgery. It's a pretty in demand field right now.
Wow.
And I drug my feet on it for a little bit because I got held up, and this was the radio guy in me that I wanted it to be, an awesome production. And I had done some podcasts before, and if you go all the way to the beginning episodes of if you find it on Spotify or Overcast or wherever, or Anchor, there's two initial episodes that were based under the Career Adventure podcast is what it was. So I rebranded it and labeled it, but the production on that is completely different than what I have now. I just finally decided how it was all going to come together. And once I did that, I was like, okay, let's just start finding people. So I do 3 episodes about my journey from being that early worker as a high schooler in a college, and then into how I use my degrees, and then went on to how I don't use my degrees, and into the work that I do now. But I've had people in tourism and entrepreneurship and food science, and one that gets into IT recruiting. I've had a dream pollinator, college admissions. I've had a mentor of mine who was a radio broadcaster that I worked with in Raleigh, North Carolina, a former college swimmer that's into geriatric care now. I just go down the line, and I've got one coming up with a very special guest by the name of Ashley Durham that is going to be phenomenal, coming up here in a couple of weeks when we get that posted. But it's so interesting hearing everybody's story, and some of these, there's a lot of these people I didn't know, but I got connected with. But there's some that I just have known in my career that when I start thinking about how I know them and how we got connected, it brings back a lot of memories. But the main thing that I found through this, in my style of podcasting, I think it comes back to not only my training in broadcasting, but when I was in economic development, I would go in and talk to hundreds of companies in my career, and CEOs and things like that. And I have to find out just kind of how their businesses are doing, and I would ask a lot of questions. And what I like to do is ask that next question. So you may answer the question. I'm not going on to the next one. I'm going to ask a question at least based on what you just talked about. And that's where you really get some good information, some good stories, and some good opportunities to really see how somebody got to a unique pathway. But so many of the people I have, and I just launched number 20 here, I think yesterday. I'm on track to have probably 50 before the end of 2022 in the podcast, and I'm going to make 2 seasons out of it. But there was always a job they wanted in high school. You're listening to this. There's a job you thought you'd be doing, and then there's a job you actually ended up doing, and then there was a next job that you were like, I've got to figure out something that I want to love or can be happy with. And you do it, but then you find out maybe that's not quite what fits you and the work you're wired to do. But then you find that, or hopefully you find that. And if you're listening to this, maybe you're on that journey somewhere, you're trying to get to that point. But that's so consistent through the whole, through all the episodes, is they think they're going to be something, they evolved into something else, needed something that was going to increase their energy and their love for going to work, and then they really find something that they ends up being their dream job. And early on, Ashley, I was asking, so if I am a career magician and could give you a wish to have your dream job, what would it be? And it was like 9 out of 10 were like, I've got it. And that was amazing to me. I thought somebody at least give me some sort of funny answer that they wanted to be like a monorail pilot at Disney World. But they were working, within the work that they had set out and dreamed to be in. So those are things that have come through my first 20 episodes that I had to adjust, have had to pivot, that I've really enjoyed having it and growing this. And I appreciate you throwing that up on the screen and inviting people to subscribe wherever they get their podcasts, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Definitely subscribe. I have subscribed to this, and I've loved listening to your podcasts and stuff that you've got. It's always fun. Like podcasting is growing. It's a huge growing field now. Um, 20 million people, I think, every year the past 2 years have kind of increased the whole world as far as podcasting goes. So it's a great opportunity to listen to something while you're doing something else, making dinner, traveling to work, the just sitting there playing with your phone. It's just really nice to have something in the background to learn from. So Nate's got some
Definitely,
really great
definitely.
keys and some fun guests on there too. So you guys definitely want to go and subscribe, learn from the best.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. Now, in your all experience, I know there's probably hard to have like one story that you like to share, one thing that you like to share, but before we close out here, is there anything that you'd like to share with the audience that you've learned over time, or just something that would be, a key that you wish you had learned when you were younger? I know we've talked a little bit about it, but just some final message.
Yeah, learning more about things as you move forward. I go back. I went to space camp in 8th grade, and I've got the jacket, I've got the hat, I've got the VHS tape that has this all. My buddy and I that we went down there, and I wanted to be that astronaut. That's what I set out to be when I was middle school, junior high age. But I remember there was a session that they actually sat us down and guided us through what is the pathway to get to that point. And they said, well, you need to excel, not probably, you do need to excel in math and science. That's when I checked out, Ashley. And I said, yeah, I'm not sure I'm into that. But what I discovered, and I didn't realize this till a few years later on, that my favorite part of that experience was sitting in mission control with the headset on and the microphone, talking to people. Talk about foreshadowing, and that I didn't maybe realize then what was being on a microphone of some sort, communicating, whether it was to a mass audience or just to whoever was in mock mission control and mock space shuttle, that type of thing. It's that experience I keep leaning on. I wish every step along the way somebody would have sat with me and said, here's what this job could be. Here's where things can go. Here's some
Mhm.
challenges you could have. That does not happen, or it doesn't happen enough. And if you're out there and you're exploring a job or have a young person in your life that is exploring your career opportunity, Google is an amazing thing, right?
Mhm.
I went to the encyclopedias to look things up. Now I
Mhm.
can, I can Google things and figure out jobs and things like that. My favorite thing is to send people to like a job board, like Indeed, type in a job that you're looking at, who's hiring it,
Mhm.
where are that being hired, what kind of years of experience do you need to get to that position that you see maybe as your ideal job, maybe not dream job, but ideal job.
Mhm.
And then what's the education that it takes to get there? Is there some other trainings or certifications or software or whatever that you need to know? That's like a recipe to get that job. So you take this thinking, this is the kind of job I want to get. Okay, who can I talk to? Where can I learn more? And how can I put that into effect? So, there's so many opportunities to learn different things out there. And there's jobs out there that exist now that did not exist yesterday, or you
Mhm.
even think are even really jobs. And that's what I get into. I didn't know that was a job, of exploration. My daughter got invited to apply for this. It's through a local bank. It was like an intern for executive intern for a
Wow.
college student. But they said you can do basically whatever you want. They were hiring for mindset and how they can recruit somebody in. And she's like, I never even thought about this type of job.
Yeah.
She thought banking, just telling her loans or whatever, but she didn't know that there's all this other stuff that happens within banking. And
Mhm.
that's what I tell the people. You may say, oh, I don't want anything to do with manufacturing. I don't want anything to do with tourism. I don't want anything. Well, there's all these jobs within there that have these different skill sets. But meet as many people as you can, get connected, and do the research. I guess that's long story short. Meet people and learn. That's the best thing you can do.
I think that's great. Meet people and learn. You can't beat that. I mean, that's one of the biggest things to succeed is you have to know somebody, but and then just be willing to learn. You give up the right to succeed if you're not willing to learn is what I always say. So life is always
Exactly.
changing.
Exactly.
Guys, reach out to Nate and on social media. You can reach out to him and touch base, follow his podcast, That's a Job. And you can also email him, Nate at need10.com. Or is there a better email for you, Nate? Or is that the best
You
one?
know, if you go to my website, nateclayberg.com, there's a way to connect there, or DM me on any social media I'm on, from LinkedIn to Instagram to Twitter to Facebook. I've not gotten in the TikTok yet, so it's intriguing to me, but I don't know if I'm going to quite get into that just yet. We'll see. You never know. Never know.
TikTok is a little bit different. It's not as easy of a platform to infiltrate right now since it's becoming saturated pretty quickly. But yeah, it's not always for everybody. Okay, so um, definitely, guys, go to nateclayburn.com. You can get in touch with Nate there. You can also reach out to him on social media and see where your paths might take you. I think Nate's got some really great information, and thank you so much for being a guest with us today. And we'll see you guys back here next time on the show. And thank you so much, Nate. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate being invited. Thank you, Ashley.
Absolutely. Well, guys, like I said, we'll see you back here next time on all things on Mile Bash Spotlight Show. Take care.